Welcome to tonight's journey back in time. I'm so glad you're here with me as we explore one of history's most misunderstood professions. Comment what time you're watching this and where from, if you'd like. It's fun to know. Tonight, we're diving deep into the harsh reality of gladiatorial life in ancient Rome, discovering why being a gladiator was far from the glamorous career Hollywood might have you believe. We'll meet real people who lived these difficult lives, explore their daily routines, their struggles, and the complex world they inhabited. So get comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like, and let's travel back nearly 2,000 years to discover what life was really like in the arenas of Rome. Picture the year 150 AD. The sun rises slowly over the seven hills of Rome, casting long shadows across the sprawling city. The air is crisp with the promise of another scorching Mediterranean day. In a cramped wooden barracks on the outskirts of the city, a man named Marcus stirs on his thin straw mattress. The rough wool blanket scratches against his scarred shoulders as he opens his eyes to another day of uncertainty. Marcus wasn't born to be a gladiator. 3 years ago, he was a simple farmer in the fertile valleys north of Rome, tending to his small plot of land with weathered hands that knew the feel of good soil and the rhythm of seasons. His days began before dawn, walking through morning mist to check on his olive trees, their silver-green leaves catching the first light. The earth smelled rich and alive after the night's dew, and birds sang their territorial songs from the branches overhead. Back then, Marcus would pause in his work to watch the sunrise paint the distant hills in shades of gold and amber. His small stone cottage sat beside a clear stream that bubbled and gurgled its way toward the Tiber River. He grew vegetables in neat rows, barley and wheat that swayed like ocean waves in the afternoon breeze, and kept a few goats that provided milk and cheese. Life was simple, but peaceful. But peace was a luxury that didn't last. The first fad. Bad harvests came 2 years running, and the taxes demanded by Roman collectors grew heavier each season. When Marcus couldn't pay what he owed, he lost everything: his land, his cottage, his livelihood, all seized by men in clean togas who looked at him like he was already dead. With nowhere else to turn, he sold himself into gladiatorial school, trading his freedom for the promise of food and shelter. Now, as he sits up on his uncomfortable bed, Marcus runs his fingers along the fresh cut on his forearm from yesterday's training. The wound throbs with each heartbeat, a constant reminder of how far his life has fallen. Around him, other men are stirring. There's Gaius, a former construction worker whose massive hands once laid stones for Roman roads. His back is covered in a map of scars from years of carrying heavy blocks under the burning sun. Beside him sleeps Quintus, who used to be a baker in a busy Roman neighborhood, his arms still muscled from years of kneading dough and hefting sacks of grain. The morning routine begins like every other day. A harsh bell clangs through their quarters, echoing off the stone walls. The men shuffle to their feet, joints creaking from old injuries that never quite heal. They splash cold water on their faces from crude wooden basins, the shock helping to clear the fog of another restless night's sleep. Breakfast is a meager affair: barley porridge, thick and lumpy, served in wooden bowls that have seen better days. Sometimes there's a bit of bread, hard and coarse, nothing like the soft loaves Quintus used to bake in his shop, where the air was always warm and filled with the comforting smell of rising dough. He remembers the satisfaction of pulling perfectly golden loaves from his clay ovens, the way customers would smile when they caught the aroma drifting from his doorway. Stay, niece. The men don't talk much. What is there to say? They all know what the day holds. Hours of brutal training under the watchful eye of their lanista, the gladiator trainer who treats them like valuable livestock. And livestock is exactly what they are: investments to be maintained and prepared for the entertainment of others. The training grounds are located in a dusty courtyard surrounded by high walls topped with iron spikes. No one gets in or out without permission. The sand beneath their feet is coarse and unforgiving, mixed with sawdust to absorb blood during practice sessions. It crunches underfoot and gets into everything: clothes, hair, wounds, a constant gritty reminder of their circumstances. Marcus picks up his wooden training sword, the gladius that will become an extension of his arm if he lives long enough. The handle is worn smooth by countless hands, stained dark with sweat and time. His shield, called a scudum, is heavy and awkward. Made of wood and leather, it's decorated with faded paint that once depicted scenes of Roman victory. Now it's chipped and scarred from repeated impacts. The lanista, a former gladiator himself named Brutus, walks among his charges with the confidence of a man who has survived the arena and earned his freedom. His left leg drags slightly from an old wound that never healed properly, and his face bears the roadmap of a dozen fights. He's not cruel by nature, but he's practical. Dead gladiators don't make money, so he pushes his men hard enough to make them strong, but not so hard they break. You fight like farmers and bakers, Brutus shouts as the men begin their exercises. In the arena that will get you killed before the crowd even has time to cheer. The training is relentless. They practice the same movements over and over until their muscles remember them without conscious thought. Thrust, parry, shield up, step left, step right. The wooden swords clash together with hollow sounds that echo off the courtyard walls. Sweat drips into their eyes, making them sting and blur. Their breathing becomes ragged as the exercises continue, hour after hour. Marcus finds himself paired against Gaius for sparring practice. The big construction worker is strong but slow, and Marcus has learned to use his farmer's agility to stay out of reach of those crushing blows. They circle each other carefully, wooden blades held ready, shields positioned to protect vital organs. Gaius lunges forward with a grunt of effort, his sword aimed at Marcus's midsection. Marcus pivots on his heel, the way he used to dodge his stubborn goats when they tried to ram him, and brings his shield around to deflect the blow. The impact sends vibrations up his arm, but he's ready for it. He counters with a quick thrust toward Gaius's shoulder, pulling back just before contact, as they've been taught. Better, Brutus calls out. But in a real fight, Gaius, you'd be spitting blood right now. You telegraph your attacks like a drunk announcing his intentions to the whole tavern. The men laugh nervously. Humor helps them cope with the reality that some of them won't survive their first real fight. Statistics aren't in their favor. New gladiators, the ones called novicius, have maybe a 50-50 chance of living through their arena debut. Those odds improve with experience, but they never get good. During a brief rest period, Marcus sits in the shade of the barracks wall and thinks about his old life. He can almost taste the sweet figs that grew on the trees behind his cottage, the way their purple skins would split to reveal the honeyed flesh inside. His goats used to love those figs too, standing on their hind legs to reach the lower branches while he picked the higher fruit for market. The memory is interrupted by the arrival of their midday meal, more barley this time mixed with a few vegetables and scraps of meat that might once have been part of a chicken. The gladiators eat quickly and mechanically, fuel for their bodies rather than pleasure for their senses. They've learned not to think too much about the taste or the lack thereof. Quintus, the former baker, stares at his bowl with particular sadness. He used to take such pride in good food, in the way proper bread could fill a home with warmth and comfort. His bakery had been more than just a business. It was a gathering place where neighbors would stop to chat while picking up their daily loaves. The smell of baking bread had been his perfume, the satisfied smiles of his customers his greatest reward. My wife made the most incredible honey cakes, Quintus says, quietly to no one in particular. Every festival day she'd work for hours, getting them just right. The whole neighborhood would come by just to smell them cooling on the windowsill. Marcus nods sympathetically. They all have stories like this, memories of better times that feel like dreams now. He remembers his own wife, how she would sing while tending their small garden, her voice carrying across the fields like birdsong. She had hands that could coax life from the most stubborn soil, and a laugh that made even the hardest days feel manageable. After the meal, training resumes. The afternoon heat is brutal, reflecting off the sand and stone until the air shimmers like water. The men's tunics are soaked with sweat within minutes, the fabric clinging uncomfortably to their skin. Dehydration is a constant threat, and they're allowed water breaks only when Brutus decides they've earned them. This afternoon, they're practicing with different weapons. Some gladiators specialize in the net and trident combination, called retiarius. Others prefer the heavy armor and large shield of the Murmillo class. Marcus is training as a thrax, a type that uses a small shield and curved sword, supposedly based on Thracian warriors. The weapons feel alien in his hands. As a farmer, his tools had been extensions of his will, comfortable and familiar. His plow, his scythe, his pruning hooks, each had served a purpose that connected him to the natural world. These instruments of combat serve only destruction, and every time he picks them up, he feels a piece of his former self slipping away. The afternoon training includes lessons in stagecraft as well as combat. The gladiatorial games aren't just about fighting, they're entertainment, and the crowd expects a show. The men practice dramatic gestures, ways to play to the audience, how to make even a simple movement look heroic or villainous depending on what the spectators want to see. Remember, Brutus tells them, the crowd decides who lives and who dies. If they love you, you have a chance. If they're bored by you, you're already dead, even if you win the fight. This aspect of gladiatorial life is perhaps the most dehumanizing. These men aren't just risking their lives, they're performing their potential deaths for the amusement of others. Every movement, every expression, every moment of pain or triumph becomes part of a show designed to thrill spectators who will go home to comfortable beds and hot meals. As evening approaches, the men are finally allowed to rest. They wash in cold water that does little to soothe their aching muscles and fresh wounds. The meal is another portion of barley, sometimes supplemented with beans or lentils that provide a bit more flavor and nutrition. They eat by lamplight, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the rough stone walls. Some of the men gamble with dice carved from bone, betting the few small coins they're allowed to keep. Others write letters on precious scraps of papyrus, messages to families they may never see again. A few simply stare at the flames, lost in memories of freedom. Marcus usually spends his evenings thinking about his farm. He tries to remember every detail, the exact shade of green his olive trees turned in spring, the sound his goats made when they were content, the way morning mist would rise from his fields, like spirits returning to heaven. These memories are all he has left of the person he used to be. One evening, a new gladiator arrives at their barracks. His name is Lucius, and he's different from the others, where most of them are slaves or debtors forced into this life. Lucius is a volunteer, a free man who chose the arena for the promise of glory and riches. He's young, maybe 20 years old, with a kind of confidence that comes from never having experienced real failure. I've been training with private instructors for months, Lucius announces to anyone who will listen. I know 17 different sword combinations, and I've studied every great gladiator of the past decade. I'm going to be a champion. The older men exchange glances, but say nothing. They've seen volunteers before. Some become great fighters, but most learn quickly that training with expensive instructors in comfortable schools is very different from bleeding in the sand while 50,000 people scream for your death. Marcus feels a mixture of pity and annoyance toward the young man. There's something heartbreaking about such optimism in a place where hope is a luxury that can get you killed. But there's also something irritating about his assumption that he's different, that the rules that apply to everyone else somehow don't apply to him. The next morning brings news that they'll be fighting in 3 days. Not a major event, just a small show to entertain the crowds during a minor festival. But for the new gladiators, it will be their first taste of real combat. The announcement settles over the barracks like fog, heavy and inescapable. Preparations intensify. They practice their assigned fights, carefully choreographed battles designed to give the crowd maximum excitement. Marcus learns that he'll be facing another Thrax, a man from a rival school who's already survived 2 arena appearances. This should be encouraging, since it means his opponent is skilled enough to put on a good show, but experienced enough that the fight might end without death. However, Marcus has learned that nothing in the arena is certain. The nights before a fight are the worst. Sleep comes in fragments interrupted by anxiety and the sounds of other men dealing with their own fears. Some pray to various gods, others drink whatever wine they can acquire. A few simply lie awake staring at the ceiling and counting their heartbeats. Quintus, the former baker, spends the night before Marcus's first fight telling stories about his old neighborhood. He describes the morning routine of his bakery, how he would arrive before dawn to light the ovens and begin mixing the day's first batch of dough. The work was hard and hot, especially in summer, but there was a rhythm to it that felt natural and satisfying. The best part, Quintus says quietly, was watching people's faces when they smelled fresh bread. Children would drag their mothers over just to stand outside my shop and breathe it in. Made all the early mornings worth it. The pair listens and finds comfort in the ordinary details. It helps him remember that there's still a world outside these walls where people do normal things, like buy bread and worry about everyday problems. That world feels impossibly distant now, but knowing it exists makes the current nightmare feel slightly less permanent. The morning of the fight arrives gray and overcast, with clouds that promise rain later in the day. The gladiators eat a larger breakfast than usual, since it may be their last meal. The extra food sits heavily in Marcus's stomach as he tries to force down the familiar barley porridge. They're taken to the amphitheater in wooden carts, chained together like the valuable merchandise they've become. The building looms ahead of them, a massive stone structure that can hold tens of thousands of spectators. Even from a distance, Marcus can hear the crowd gathering, their voices combining into a low rumble like distant thunder. The holding area beneath the arena is a maze of corridors and chambers carved from stone. It smells of blood, fear, and wild animals. The sound of the crowd overhead filters down through the ceiling, growing louder as more people find their seats. Marcus tries not to think about how many thousands of eyes will soon be watching him fight for his life. They're given their real weapons now, sharp metal that gleams in the torchlight. Marcus hefts his sword and is surprised by how different it feels from the wooden training version. It's heavier, better balanced, and deadly sharp. One careless move, and it could end everything in an instant. Brutus makes his final rounds, offering last-minute advice and encouragement. To Marcus, he says, "Remember your footwork. Stay mobile. Your opponent is stronger, but you're faster. Use that advantage, and don't try to be a hero. Heroes die young and are forgotten quickly." The sound from above grows deafening as the crowd becomes impatient for the show to begin. Marcus can feel their collective energy pressing down through the stone ceiling like a physical weight. Soon, very soon, he'll walk up those stairs and into the bright arena where his fate will be decided by strangers who see him as nothing more than entertainment. As he waits for his turn, Marcus closes his eyes and tries to remember the sound of wind moving through grain fields. It's a gentle, whispering sound that used to put him to sleep on summer nights when he left his windows open to catch the breeze. Now, surrounded by stone and violence, that memory feels like a prayer, a small piece of peace to carry with him into whatever comes next. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly on the white sand of the arena floor. Marcus squints against the glare as he emerges from the underground passages, his legs feeling unsteady beneath him. The roar of the crowd hits him like a physical blow, 50,000 voices united in bloodthirsty excitement. He's heard that sound from below, but experiencing it in person is overwhelming in a way he never expected. The amphitheater stretches up and away from him in terraced rings, every seat filled with people eager to see him fight and possibly die. They wave colorful banners and shout encouragement or insults depending on which gladiator they're betting on. The wealthy citizens in the lower seats wear clean white togas and eat delicacies from silver platters. Higher up, the common people pack together in rougher clothing, but their enthusiasm is just as intense. Marcus forces himself to look around, trying to take in details that might help him survive the next few minutes. The arena floor is covered in fresh sand, pristine and unmarked. Soon it will be stained with blood, his or his opponent's or both. Along the walls, attendants stand ready with hooks and ropes to drag away bodies if necessary. His opponent enters from the opposite side of the arena. The man is older than Marcus expected, maybe 40 years old, with the weathered look of someone who has seen too much violence. Scars crisscross his arms and torso, a roadmap of previous battles. He moves with the careful economy of motion that comes from experience, wasting no energy on unnecessary gestures. They face each other across the sand, two men who have no personal reason to fight, but who must try to kill each other for the entertainment of strangers. The referee, dressed in a clean white tunic, explains the rules they both already know: fight until one yields or dies. The crowd will decide the fate of any gladiator who surrenders. Marcus adjusts his grip on his sword and tries to remember everything Brutus taught him. Keep moving, watch the eyes, not the weapon. Don't let emotion override training. Use your speed advantage. Stay alive long enough to give the crowd a good show. The signal comes and the fight begins. His opponent circles cautiously, shield up, sword ready. Marcus mirrors the movement, trying to look for openings without exposing himself to attack. The crowd noise fades into background as his focus narrows to this one moment, this one challenge that will determine whether he sees another sunset. The first exchange comes suddenly. His opponent feints left, then attacks right, his blade flashing in the afternoon sun. Marcus barely gets his shield up in time, the impact jarring his arm and shoulder. He responds with a quick thrust that his opponent deflects easily, the metal ringing against metal in a sound that carries clearly through the arena. They separate and circle again. Marcus can feel sweat beginning to run down his back despite the cooling breeze. His heart pounds so hard, he's sure the crowd can hear it. Every instinct tells him to run, to flee this madness and find somewhere safe to hide. But there is nowhere to run in the arena. No escape except through victory or death. His opponent presses the attack, using his experience to control the pace of the fight. Marcus finds himself giving ground, backpedaling across the sand while trying to avoid the increasingly aggressive strikes. The crowd senses his disadvantage, and their noise grows louder, some cheering for the veteran, others urging the newcomer to fight back. A lucky break comes when his opponent's foot slips slightly in the loose sand. Marcus seizes the opportunity, lunging forward with a combination he's practiced hundreds of times. His blade finds its mark, opening a shallow cut across the veteran's sword arm. First blood draws a huge roar from the spectators, but the wound only seems to anger his opponent. The veteran attacks with renewed fury, his sword work becoming more aggressive and creative. Marcus barely manages to keep up with the barrage, his shield taking hit after hit until his arm goes numb from the impacts. He realizes with growing panic that his speed advantage means nothing if he can't find room to use it. The fight continues for what feels like hours, but is probably only minutes. Both men are bleeding now from multiple small wounds, their blood mixing with sweat and sand to form a gritty paste that makes their weapons slippery and hard to hold. The crowd is in ecstasy, cheering every exchange and gasping at near misses. Marcus begins to tire. His movements become slightly slower, his reactions a fraction less sharp. The veteran senses this change and increases his pressure, driving Marcus back toward the arena wall, where there will be no room to maneuver. This is the moment Marcus has dreaded, when skill and preparation give way to desperation and luck. With his back almost against the wall, Marcus makes a desperate gamble. He drops his guard deliberately, inviting an attack he hopes he can counter. His opponent takes the bait, lunging forward with what should be a killing blow. Marcus twists aside at the last possible second, letting the blade pass harmlessly by his ribs, then brings his own sword up in a rising cut that catches the veteran under his shield arm. The wound is deep this time, and the veteran staggers backward, clutching his side. Blood flows freely between his fingers, bright red against the white sand. The crowd goes wild, sensing that the fight is reaching its climax. Marcus advances carefully, not wanting to waste this opportunity, but not wanting to rush into a trap either. His opponent tries one last desperate attack, but his strength is fading fast. Marcus parries the weak thrust and steps inside the man's guard, bringing his sword to rest against the veteran's throat. The fight is over. The veteran drops his weapon and raises his hand in submission. He's earned the right to ask for mercy through his brave showing, and now the crowd will decide his fate. Marcus steps back and waits, his chest heaving from exhaustion and adrenaline. The crowd's reaction is mixed. Some wave their thumbs up, indicating mercy for the brave gladiator who gave them a good show. Others point their thumbs down, demanding death as the price of defeat. The editor of the games, the wealthy citizen who paid for this entertainment, looks around the arena, gauging the mood before making his decision. After what seems like an eternity, he raises his thumb. Mercy. The veteran will live to fight another day, assuming his wounds heal properly. Marcus feels a rush of relief that surprises him with its intensity. He didn't want to kill this man who fought so bravely and with such skill. Attendants rush onto the sand to help the wounded gladiator. Marcus raises his sword in salute to the crowd, playing his part in the theatrical aspects of the games. The noise is deafening as tens of thousands of people cheer his victory. For a moment, he almost understands the appeal of this life, the intoxicating rush of adulation from so many voices. But the feeling passes quickly as he walks back toward the underground passages. The crowd's cheers will fade, but the memory of nearly killing another human being for entertainment will stay with him forever. This is what success looks like in the arena, and it feels more like defeat than victory. Back in the holding area, other gladiators congratulate him on surviving his first fight. Quintus, who fought earlier and also won his match, claps him on the shoulder with genuine relief. They've both lived through their debuts, beating the odds that said at least one of them should be dead by now. "How do you feel?" Quintus asks as they sit together, sharing a wineskin someone smuggled into the chambers. Marcus considers the question carefully. "Empty," he finally says. "I thought I'd feel something more, fear or relief or pride. But mostly I just feel empty." Quintus nods, understanding. "It's the strangest thing about this life. You train so hard and worry so much about that first fight. Then when it's over, you realize it was just the first of many. The real battle isn't any single fight. It's surviving long enough to earn your freedom." The journey back to the barracks is quiet. The gladiators who survived are exhausted and thoughtful. Those who lost but lived are grateful and sobered. The one who died, a young volunteer, much like Lucius, is already being forgotten by everyone except perhaps his family, if he had one. That night, Marcus lies on his straw mattress and tries to process what happened. He killed no one today, but came close enough to taste how it would feel. The veteran's blood on his sword had been warm and real, and the moment when he held that blade to another man's throat will replay in his dreams for years to come. Sleep comes eventually, filled with fragments of memory. The roar of the crowd mixes with the sound of wind through grain fields. The smell of blood and sand mingles with the scent of olive blossoms. His two worlds, past and present, blend together in ways that make him question which one is real and which is the dream. The days following Marcus's first fight settle into a new routine. Word of his victory has spread through the gladiatorial community, earning him a small measure of respect from his fellow fighters and slightly better treatment from the guards. But success in the arena is a double-edged sword. Winners are valuable properties, which means more training, better food, and more medical attention. It also means more fights, higher stakes, and greater expectations from the crowds. Brutus begins training Marcus for his next appearance, scheduled for a month away. This time he'll face a different type of gladiator, a murmillo with heavy armor and a large shield. The fighting style will be completely different, requiring new techniques and strategies. Marcus spends hours practicing against other fighters, learning to exploit the weak points in heavy armor while avoiding the crushing power of their attacks. The training is more intense now. As a proven fighter, Marcus is expected to put on a better show, to display more skill and style than a mere beginner. He learns advanced techniques, combination attacks that look spectacular while still being effective. The theatrical aspects of combat become more important as his reputation grows. Between training sessions, Marcus often finds himself thinking about the veteran he fought. The man survived his wounds and has been sent to a different school, but Marcus wonders about his story. Had he been a farmer too? A craftsman? What series of misfortunes led him to the arena, and what kept him fighting for years when death would have been easier? These questions occupy his mind during the quiet hours before dawn, when the barracks are still except for the sounds of sleeping men. Sometimes Marcus imagines conversations with his former opponent, discussions about their old lives and dreams of freedom. In these imagined talks, they're not gladiators, but simply two men sharing their stories over cups of wine in a peaceful tavern. Quintus, now recovered from his own arena debut, shares similar thoughts. The former baker has been assigned to fight in beast hunts, facing wild animals rather than other gladiators. It's considered less prestigious, but also slightly safer, since the animals, while dangerous, don't have the tactical intelligence of human opponents. I dreamed about bread again last night, Quintus tells Marcus one morning as they eat their barley porridge. Not the fancy stuff rich people eat, just good, honest loaves that would fill a working man's belly. I could smell the yeast and feel the dough between my fingers. When I woke up, I tried to remember the recipe my father taught me, but some of the details are already getting fuzzy. This is one of the cruelest aspects of their situation. Not only have they lost their freedom in their former lives, but the memories of those lives gradually fade as they're replaced by the harsh realities of gladiatorial existence. Each day in the barracks pushes their old identities a little further into the past, until eventually they risk forgetting who they used to be entirely. Marcus makes a conscious effort to preserve his memories of farming. Each night before sleep, he mentally walks through his old property, checking on his trees, examining his fields, greeting his animals. The exercise has become a ritual, a way of maintaining connection to the person he was before the arena claimed him. One evening, as autumn begins to give way to winter, news arrives that changes everything for the gladiators of their school. They've been selected to participate in the Grand Games, celebrating the Emperor's birthday, a massive spectacle that will last for days and feature hundreds of fighters. It's the kind of opportunity that can make careers and earn substantial prize money, but it also means facing the best gladiators from across the empire. The announcement sends ripples of excitement and terror through the barracks. Fighting in the Imperial Games means performing before the emperor himself, with all the honor and danger that implies. Success could lead to rapid advancement, better conditions, even eventual freedom. Failure almost certainly means death, since the crowds at imperial games are less forgiving than those at smaller local events. Preparations for the grand games consume their entire world. Training schedules double, with sessions beginning before dawn and continuing well into the evening. New equipment arrives, finer weapons and armor that gleam like jewelry in the lamplight. Even their diet improves, with more meat and vegetables to build strength for the challenges ahead. Marcus finds himself assigned to a special event, a recreation of a famous historical battle where Roman legions defeated Celtic warriors. He'll fight as one of the Celts, which means different weapons and armor than he's accustomed to. The Celtic fighters use longer swords and smaller shields, emphasizing speed and ferocity over the disciplined techniques of Roman gladiators. Learning to fight in the Celtic style feels like starting over. His muscle memory, developed over months of training with Roman weapons, works against him now. The longer sword requires different footwork, different timing, different strategies. Brutus assigns him a new trainer, a former Celtic warrior named Brennus, who was captured in one of the frontier wars. Brennus is a lean, scarred man with graying hair and eyes like winter storms. He speaks Latin with a thick accent and has little patience for weakness or complaint. Under his guidance, Marcus learns to channel a different kind of fighting spirit, one based on fury and courage rather than discipline and technique. Romans fight like they build roads, Brennus explains during one particularly brutal training session. Straight lines, careful planning, everything neat and orderly. Celts fight like wild storms, unpredictable, overwhelming, impossible to control. If you want to survive the games, you must learn to be the storm. The Celtic style suits Marcus better than he expected. After months of trying to suppress his emotions and fight with cold calculation, there's something liberating about channeling his anger and frustration into his sword work. His movements become more fluid, more instinctive, as if he's tapping into something primal that Roman training had buried. As winter deepens and the games approach, the entire city seems to vibrate with anticipation. Construction crews work around the clock to prepare the amphitheater, building elaborate sets and mechanical devices for the various spectacles. Exotic animals arrive from across the empire, their roars and calls adding to the general atmosphere of barely controlled chaos. Marcus begins to understand the true scale of what they're preparing for. This won't be a simple fight between two men watched by a few thousand spectators. It will be a massive production involving hundreds of performers, elaborate costumes and sets, complex choreography, and an audience that includes the most powerful people in the world. The pressure of performing before such an audience weighs heavily on all the gladiators. Mistakes that might be forgiven at a local game could mean death at the imperial celebration. The emperor and his guests expect perfection, and anything less might be interpreted as disrespect to the imperial presence. Training becomes almost ritualistic in its intensity. Marcus practices the same combinations hundreds of times until they become automatic reflexes. He studies the habits and techniques of other Celtic fighters, learning to recognize and counter their preferred attacks. Every aspect of his performance is rehearsed and refined until it achieves a kind of deadly artistry. The weather grows colder as the games draw near. Frost covers the training ground most mornings, making the sand slippery and treacherous. The gladiators train anyway, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air as they practice their deadly dance. Pain from old injuries seems worse in the cold, and new wounds heal more slowly, but no one dares to ask for reduced training time. During this period, Marcus receives an unexpected visitor. A woman in expensive clothing asks to see him, claiming to be a representative of a wealthy patron who has been following his career. She's middle-aged with intelligent eyes and an air of quiet authority that suggests she's accustomed to having her requests granted. "My employer is impressed by your performances," she explains, as they sit in a small chamber reserved for such meetings. "He believes you have the potential to become one of the great gladiators of this generation. He's prepared to invest in your career, providing better equipment, training, and medical care in exchange for a percentage of your prize money." The offer is tempting, but also troubling. Having a wealthy patron could dramatically improve his chances of survival and eventual freedom, but it would also mean owing loyalty to someone he's never met. It's another layer of ownership in a life already defined by servitude. Marcus asks for time to consider the offer, and the woman agrees to return in a few days for his answer. After she leaves, he discusses the situation with Quintus and some of the other experienced fighters. Their advice is mixed. Some see patronage as the only realistic path to freedom, while others warn about the strings that come attached to such arrangements. The decision becomes moot when Marcus learns that several other gladiators from his school have already accepted similar offers from competing patrons. The games are becoming not just entertainment, but a battlefield where wealthy Romans compete for prestige through their sponsored fighters. He realizes that refusing patronage might actually put him at a disadvantage, facing opponents with better equipment and training. When the woman returns, Marcus accepts her employer's offer. The immediate benefits are obvious: new armor that fits perfectly, weapons crafted by the finest smiths in Rome, and access to trainers who have worked with champion gladiators. But he also senses that he's crossed another line, moving further away from any hope of controlling his own destiny. The final week before the games passes in a blur of preparation and anticipation. The gladiators are moved to special quarters, closer to the amphitheater, luxurious by their usual standards, but clearly designed more for security than comfort. They eat better food, sleep on softer beds, and receive medical examinations to ensure they're in peak condition for the emperor's entertainment. Marcus spends his last free evening writing a letter to his wife, assuming she's still alive and hasn't remarried. He has no way to send it, but the act of putting his thoughts on papyrus helps organize his feelings about what's to come. He writes about his memories of their farm, his regrets about the choices that led him here, and his hopes that she's found some measure of happiness despite his failures. The morning of the games dawns clear and cold, with a sharp wind that cuts through even the warmest clothing. Marcus wakes before the guards come to rouse them, his stomach tight with nervous energy that makes eating difficult. Around him, other gladiators go through their own pre-fight rituals, some praying to various gods, others checking and rechecking their equipment, a few simply sitting in silence and gathering their courage. The procession to the amphitheater is unlike anything Marcus has experienced. Thousands of people line the streets, cheering and throwing flowers at the gladiators as they pass. Some of the fighters wave and smile, playing to the crowd's enthusiasm, Others, like Marcus, find the attention overwhelming and focus on putting one foot in front of the other until they reach their destination. The amphitheater itself is transformed for the Imperial Games. Banners in Imperial purple hang from every tier, and the arena floor has been decorated with elaborate paintings depicting scenes from Roman mythology. Mechanical devices rise from hidden chambers beneath the sand, creating artificial forests and mountains for the various spectacles planned throughout the day. In the holding areas below, the atmosphere is tense but focused. Hundreds of gladiators from dozens of schools prepare for their individual events, each group keeping to itself while eyeing the competition. Marcus recognizes some faces from previous games, veteran fighters whose reputations have spread throughout the gladiatorial community. His event is scheduled for the afternoon, giving him hours to wait and worry. He tries to stay loose, practicing his movements in the confined space while avoiding the other fighters also trying to prepare. The Celtic sword feels comfortable in his hand now, its longer reach and different balance no longer foreign after weeks of intensive training. Brennus appears beside him like a ghost, the Celtic trainer's ability to move silently still surprising after all their time together. "Remember what I taught you," he says quietly. "The Romans in the audience expect you to fight like a savage, all fury and no skill. Use that expectation against them. Fight smart, but make it look wild." The advice makes sense tactically, but Marcus wonders if it's possible to fake the kind of berserker rage the crowd expects. He's learned to channel his anger during training, but calling it up on command in front of 50,000 spectators might be beyond his abilities. Still, he nods and thanks his trainer, filing the suggestion away with all the other pieces of advice he's accumulated. As the morning progresses, the sounds from above grow louder and more complex. The crowd cheers for the preliminary events, beast hunts and novelty acts, designed to warm up the audience for the main attractions. Occasionally, word filters down about particularly spectacular moments, a famous hunter taking down a lion with a single spear thrust, or a group of condemned criminals putting up an unexpectedly brave fight against a pack of wolves. Marcus tries not to think too much about these other events. Each represents someone else's life and death struggle, and dwelling on the broader scale of violence happening above him serves no purpose except to increase his own anxiety. Instead, he focuses on his breathing, on keeping his muscles loose and ready, on maintaining the mental state that will give him the best chance of survival. The Celtic battle recreation is one of the day's major attractions, elaborate spectacle featuring 50 fighters on each side. Marcus will be part of the Celtic force, facing Roman legionnaires in a choreographed but still deadly recreation of historical warfare. The event is designed to celebrate Roman military prowess, which means the Celts are expected to fight bravely but ultimately lose. This presents its own challenges. Fighting to lose convincingly while still staying alive requires a delicate balance. Show too much skill, and you might upstage the Romans, angering the audience and the organizers. Fight too weakly, and you might be dismissed as cowardly, earning the crowd's contempt and a likely death sentence. The key is to be heroic in defeat, brave but ultimately outmatched by Roman superiority. When the time finally comes, Marcus joins his fellow Celtic fighters in a staging area just beneath the arena floor. They've been dressed in rough tunics and given primitive-looking armor that's actually quite effective, despite its crude appearance. War paint has been applied to their faces in swirling patterns that are supposed to look authentically barbaric. The Roman legionnaires wait in an adjacent area, their equipment polished to mirror brightness, and their formations parade ground perfect. They represent the civilized order that the empire claims to bring to the world, while the Celts embody the wild chaos that must be tamed. It's political theater disguised as historical recreation, but the weapons are real and the blood that will be spilled will be genuine. As they wait for their entrance, Marcus finds himself standing next to a gladiator named Caratacus, another former farmer who was captured during a border raid rather than falling into debt. He's older than Marcus, maybe 45, with graying hair and hands that still bear the calluses of agricultural work. Been thinking about my harvest, Caratacus says quietly, his eyes focused on something far beyond the stone walls around them. Had a good apple orchard, trees my grandfather planted. This time of year, I'd be storing the winter apples, wrapping each one in straw, and laying them in wooden boxes. Some of those apples would keep until spring, sweet and crisp even after months in storage. Marcus nods, understanding the need to hold on to such memories. And had olive trees, he replies. Not as old as your apples, but I planted them myself when I first got the land. Takes years for olive trees to mature, and I always wondered if I'd live long enough to see them reach full production. They share a moment of comfortable silence, two men remembering better times before the madness of their current situation claims their attention again. Around them, other fighters make their own preparations, checking weapons and armor, saying prayers, or simply trying to control their fear. The signal comes and they march up the ramp into the blinding afternoon sun. The roar from the crowd is immediate and overwhelming, 50,000 voices rising in a wall of sound that seems to press against them like a physical force. Marcus shields his eyes against the glare and tries to take in the spectacle surrounding him. The arena has been transformed into a representation of a Celtic hill fort, complete with wooden palisades and earthwork defenses. Artificial trees and boulders create a landscape that looks almost natural despite its obvious construction. The attention to detail is impressive and disturbing, a reminder of how much effort and expense the Romans will invest in their entertainment. The Celtic fighters take their positions behind the makeshift fortifications, while the Roman legionnaires form up in perfect ranks on the opposite side of the arena. For a few moments, the two forces simply regard each other across the sand, the crowd's noise fading to an expectant murmur as everyone waits for the battle to begin. Then the Roman trumpets sound, and the legionnaires advance in textbook formation, their shields locked together and their spears presented forward. It's an impressive display of military precision, each soldier moving in perfect synchronization with his comrades. The crowd cheers appreciatively as the formation approaches the Celtic defenses. Marcus grips his sword tighter and prepares for his role in this deadly pageant. He knows that many of the men around him won't survive the next few minutes, and that he himself might be among the casualties. But there's no escape now, no choice except to play his part and hope that skill, luck, and the crowd's desire for entertainment will be enough to keep him alive. The battle begins with a volley of javelins from the Roman ranks, the iron points flashing in the sunlight as they arc over the Celtic defenses. Most are caught on shields or embed themselves harmlessly in the wooden palisades, but a few find their marks. Marcus hears screams of pain and sees men falling even before the real fighting begins. Then the Romans reach the barriers, and the careful choreography gives way to genuine combat. Marcus finds himself face to face with a legionnaire whose polished armor reflects the afternoon sun like a mirror. The man's eyes are visible through the gaps in his helmet, focused and professional. This isn't personal for him, just another day's work in service to the Empire. Their first exchange is tentative, each fighter testing the other's skill and looking for advantages. The Roman fights with textbook precision, his techniques drawn from manuals written by the greatest military minds of the age. Marcus responds with the wilder Celtic style Brennus taught him, his movements more fluid and unpredictable. The crowd cheers as the individual duels play out across the artificial battlefield. Some gladiators ham it up for the audience, roaring challenges and making theatrical gestures between attacks. Others, like Marcus, focus on the deadly serious business of staying alive while putting on an entertaining show. His opponent is good, better than the veteran Marcus faced in his first fight. The Legionnaire's shield work is particularly impressive, each defensive movement flowing seamlessly into an offensive counter. Marcus finds himself giving ground, retreating deeper into the Celtic fortifications while looking for an opening. Around them, the battle rages with carefully controlled chaos. The Romans are winning as scripted, but the Celts are making them pay for every foot of ground. Bodies litter the sand, some motionless, others writhing in pain, while attendants rush to drag them to safety. The smell of blood mingles with sawdust and sweat, creating an aroma that will forever be associated in Marcus's mind with the horror of organized violence. A lucky break comes when another Celtic fighter crashes into Marcus's opponent from the side, disrupting the Romans' defense for just a moment. Marcus seizes the opportunity, landing a cut across the Legionnaire's sword arm that draws blood and earns a roar of approval from the crowd. But his opponent adapts quickly, switching his grip to accommodate the wound and pressing his attack with renewed determination. Marcus realizes that he's facing a true professional, someone who has survived multiple battles through skill and experience rather than luck. This fight will not be won easily. The combat continues across the churned sand, two skilled fighters testing each other, while thousands of spectators cheer every exchange. Marcus can feel his strength beginning to flag, the intensity of the battle taking its toll on his endurance. His opponent seems less affected, the superior conditioning that comes with being part of an elite military unit, giving him an advantage in the longer engagement. Desperation breeds innovation. Marcus begins mixing techniques from his different training regimens, combining Roman discipline with Celtic fury and adding moves he's improvised during practice sessions. The result is a fighting style that's uniquely his own, unpredictable enough to keep his opponent guessing while maintaining enough structure to be effective. The crowd senses that this particular duel has become something special. A circle of space opens around the two fighters as other combats pause to watch the skilled display. Even some of the Romans stop fighting to observe, professional appreciation overriding the demands of the scripted battle. Marcus manages to land another cut, this one across his opponent's thigh, but takes a shallow wound to his ribs in return. Both men are bleeding now, their movements becoming slightly more cautious as fatigue and injury take their toll. The fight has gone on longer than most arena combats, a testament to the skill of both participants. The end comes suddenly, as it often does in real combat. Marcus's opponent overextends slightly on a thrust, and Marcus is able to step inside his guard and bring his sword to the Roman's throat. For a moment, they stand frozen, the outcome clear to everyone watching. But this is theater as much as combat, and the script calls for Roman victory. Marcus hesitates, knowing that killing his opponent now would ruin the carefully planned spectacle. His moment of uncertainty is all the opening the legionnaire needs. A hidden dagger appears in the Roman's offhand, its point finding the gap in Marcus's armor below his left arm. The pain is immediate and shocking. Hot steel sliding between ribs to find soft tissue beneath. Marcus staggers backward, his own sword falling from suddenly nerveless fingers. Blood spreads across his tunic, warm and wet against his skin. The crowd erupts in appreciation for what they assume is expertly choreographed action. Marcus falls to one knee, then to both, the strength flowing out of him along with his blood. His opponent stands over him, sword raised for the killing blow that will complete this particular scene in their elaborate pageant. Marcus looks up at the blade glinting in the afternoon sun and finds himself thinking not of death, but of olive trees, wondering if they ever reached the full production he had dreamed of. The killing blow never falls. Instead, his opponent steps back and raises his sword in salute, acknowledging Marcus's brave fight. The crowd's reaction suggests mercy, their cheers indicating approval for sparing a gallant foe. Marcus realizes that his hesitation, his moment of unwillingness to spoil the show, has somehow earned him the very thing he was trying to preserve. Attendants rush onto the sand with stretchers and medical supplies. Marcus finds himself being lifted and carried toward the medical stations beneath the arena, the sounds of continuing battle fading behind him. The wound in his side throbs with each heartbeat, but he's alive and conscious, which suggests it missed anything immediately vital. The medical facilities beneath the amphitheater are surprisingly sophisticated, staffed by doctors who have extensive experience treating gladiatorial injuries. Marcus is placed on a wooden table while a Greek physician examines his wound with professional detachment. The man's hands are steady and sure as he probes the injury, determining its severity and the best course of treatment. "You'll live," the doctor announces after completing his examination. "The blade missed your lung and major blood vessels. You'll be weak for a few weeks while you heal, but there shouldn't be any permanent damage." The relief Marcus feels is overwhelming, made more intense by the realization of how close he came to death. A finger's width in any direction, and the hidden dagger would have found something vital. He's survived another fight, beaten odds that seem to get longer each time he steps into the arena. As he lies on the medical table, listening to the distant sounds of the continuing games, Marcus thinks about the path that brought him here, from farmer to debtor to gladiator, each step seeming inevitable, in hindsight but chosen freely at the time. He wonders if there were moments when different decisions might have led to different outcomes, or if his fate was sealed the day he first planted seeds in soil he couldn't really afford. Recovery is slow but steady. The wound heals cleanly thanks to the skilled medical care, leaving only a thin scar to mark where Roman steel found its target. Marcus spends his days in the infirmary, sharing space with other wounded gladiators and learning their stories. Each man has followed a different path to the arena, but all share the common experience of having their previous lives stripped away and replaced with this strange existence balanced between celebrity and slavery. Quintus visits regularly, bringing news from the barracks and updates on their fellow fighters. Some have earned their freedom through exceptional performances, others have died in subsequent games, and a few have simply disappeared into the vast machinery of Roman entertainment. It's a reminder that gladiatorial careers tend to be brief and unpredictable, measured in fights survived rather than years lived. Been thinking about opening another bakery, Quintus says during one of his visits. If I ever get out of this life, I mean, maybe somewhere far from Rome, a smaller town where people just want good bread without all the complications. Marcus nods, understanding the appeal of such dreams, even if they seem impossibly distant. I'd like to see my trees again, he replies, just once, to know if they survived without me. Olive trees are tough, but they need care to produce their best fruit. They sit in comfortable silence, two men who have seen too much violence, dreaming of simpler times and peaceful occupations. Around them, other wounded fighters rest or receive treatment, each lost in his own thoughts about past and future. As Marcus's strength returns, so does the reality of his situation. He's proven himself as an entertaining fighter, which means more bookings, bigger events, and increasingly dangerous opponents. Success in the arena is a trap as much as a blessing, each victory making the next fight both more lucrative and more likely to be his last. The patron who sponsored his equipment for the Imperial Games sends representatives to discuss future arrangements. They're pleased with his performance and interested in additional investment, talking about bookings that could lead to substantial prize money and eventual freedom. But Marcus has learned to read between the lines of such offers. The path to freedom through the arena is littered with the bodies of gladiators who thought they were close to earning their release. Still, what choice does he have? Refusing to fight isn't an option, and mediocre performance is more dangerous than spectacular success. The only way forward is through more sand, more blood, more moments of standing over fallen opponents while crowds cheer for entertainment purchased with human suffering. Winter begins to give way to spring as Marcus returns to training. His body has healed but carries new limitations, subtle changes in flexibility and endurance that require adjustments to his fighting style. Brutus works with him patiently, adapting techniques to accommodate the lingering effects of his injury while building back the strength and speed that keep him competitive. The training routine feels different now, less desperate and more professional. Marcus has proven he can survive in the arena, which changes how others view him and how he views himself. He's no longer a desperate debtor fighting for his life, but a skilled gladiator with a growing reputation and legitimate prospects for advancement. But with professional recognition comes professional pressures. The crowds expect more from established fighters, demanding increasingly spectacular performances and showing less patience for anything they perceive as weakness or cowardice. Marcus finds himself caught between the need to survive and the need to entertain, a balance that grows more precarious with each appearance. His next scheduled fight is against a gladiator from Alexandria, a veteran of 37 arena appearances who has earned fame throughout the eastern provinces. It will be Marcus's first encounter with a truly elite opponent, a test that will determine whether his success so far has been skill or luck. Preparation for this fight consumes months of training. Marcus studies his opponent's techniques through reports from other gladiators and trainers who have seen him fight. He learns that the Alexandrian favors elaborate combinations and dramatic flourishes that excite crowds while remaining devastatingly effective. It's a style that requires both supreme confidence and exceptional skill, traits that have kept the man alive through dozens of potentially fatal encounters. The pressure of facing such an experienced opponent weighs heavily on Marcus as the fight approaches. This isn't a debut against an unknown veteran or a scripted battle with predetermined outcomes. This is a pure test of gladiatorial skill between two professionals at the height of their abilities. The night before the fight, Marcus lies awake, thinking about his journey from farm to arena. 3 years ago, he was a simple man with simple concerns, worried about weather and crops, and making enough money to keep his small plot of land. Now he's preparing to risk his life for the entertainment of strangers, his survival dependent on skills he never wanted to learn. Yet there's something to be said for the clarity of his current existence. On the farm, he worried about dozens of variables beyond his control: weather, markets, taxes, the health of his animals. In the arena, everything reduces to a single moment of truth between two people with sharp weapons. Win or lose, live or die, success or failure, measured in the most immediate terms possible. The morning of the fight dawns gray and humid, with a kind of oppressive heat that makes movement feel sluggish. Marcus goes through his pre-fight routine mechanically, eating little and checking his equipment repeatedly. The familiar rituals help calm his nerves while giving his hands something to do besides shake with anticipation. His opponent arrives with considerable fanfare, accompanied by a retinue of trainers, sponsors, and hangers-on that speaks to his status in the gladiatorial hierarchy. The Alexandrian is younger than Marcus expected, maybe 30 years old, with the lean build and watchful eyes of a professional survivor. He moves with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable with violence, his presence filling the holding area with quiet authority. They don't speak before the fight, communication limited to respectful nods of acknowledgement. There's nothing personal in their impending combat, just two craftsmen preparing to demonstrate their skills under the most extreme circumstances possible. The crowd above grows louder as fight time approaches, their anticipation adding pressure that both gladiators feel even through the stone ceiling. When the moment comes, they walk into the arena together, side by side like colleagues, heading to a difficult but familiar job. The crowd's reaction is immediate and intense, cheering for what promises to be an exceptional display of gladiatorial skill. Betting tablets circulate through the stands as spectators wager on the outcome, their choices based on reputation, appearance, and intuition. Marcus takes his position and tries to shut out everything except his opponent and the sand between them. The Alexandrian does the same, his focus narrowing to this single moment that will determine which of them sees another sunset. For a few seconds, they simply regard each other across the arena floor, each taking the measure of his opponent and looking for early signs of advantage or weakness. The signal comes and they begin to circle, weapons ready, but not yet committed to attack. This is the chess match that precedes all great gladiatorial combats, each fighter probing for information while revealing as little as possible about their own intentions. The crowd grows quiet, sensing that they're about to witness something exceptional. The first exchange comes suddenly, the Alexandrians' attack flowing like water from defensive positioning into offensive action. Marcus barely manages to parry the strike, the force of the impact jarring his arm and shoulder. His opponent's reputation for both skill and power proves well deserved from the very first contact. They separate and circle again, but the dynamic of the fight has been established. The Alexandrian will control the pace and timing, forcing Marcus to react rather than initiate. It's a dangerous position to be in against such a skilled opponent, but Marcus has learned to fight from disadvantage during his years in the arena. The combat develops into a display of technique and endurance that has the crowd on its feet. Both gladiators demonstrate why they've survived so many arena appearances, their movements efficient and deadly, while maintaining the theatrical flair that makes gladiatorial combat as much art as violence. Marcus manages to land several touches with his blade, opening minor cuts on his opponent's arm and shoulder. But the Alexandrian responds with combinations that come closer to ending the fight, his sword work displaying a level of sophistication that Marcus has never encountered before. As the fight continues, Marcus begins to understand that he's facing more than just superior skill. The Alexandrian fights with the confidence of someone who has never doubted his ability to win, whose entire identity is built around gladiatorial success. It's a kind of certainty that Marcus, with his memories of farming and his reluctant entry into this world, has never possessed. But those same memories might be his salvation. Where the Alexandrian sees only the arena and its rules, Marcus draws on experiences that have nothing to do with combat. The patience learned from waiting for crops to grow, the adaptability required to work with unpredictable weather, the stubborn persistence that kept him farming marginal land for years. The breakthrough comes when Marcus stops trying to match his opponent's sophisticated techniques and instead relies on the straightforward approach that served him well as a farmer. Instead of elaborate combinations, he focuses on simple, direct attacks that his opponent might underestimate. Instead of trying to outfight the Alexandrian, he tries to outlast him. The strategy works gradually, wearing down his opponent's initial advantage through persistence and unpredictability. The Alexandrian's movements become slightly less fluid as fatigue sets in, his combinations losing some of their snap and precision. Marcus presses his advantage carefully, not wanting to overcommit and leave himself vulnerable to a counterattack. The end comes not with spectacular technique, but with simple determination. Marcus lands a solid thrust to his opponent's midsection, the blade finding the gap between armor plates that every gladiator learns to protect. The Alexandrian staggers, his own weapon dropping as he clutches the wound. For a moment they stand facing each other, the outcome clear, but not yet final. The crowd roars its approval, impressed by the quality of combat they've witnessed. Marcus steps back and waits for his opponent's decision, knowing that a fighter of such reputation has earned the right to ask for mercy. The Alexandrian straightens, despite his wound, and raises his hand in the traditional gesture of surrender. The crowd's response is immediately positive, their cheers indicating support for sparing a gladiator who has provided years of entertainment. Marcus feels a familiar surge of relief that he won't have to kill the skilled and brave opponent. As attendants rush onto the sand to assist the wounded gladiator, Marcus raises his own sword in salute to the crowd. The victory feels different from his previous successes, earned against a truly elite opponent through strategy and endurance rather than luck or superior equipment. For the first time since entering the arena, he allows himself to believe that he might actually have what it takes to survive this life long enough to earn his freedom. The celebration is brief, as it always is in the gladiatorial world. Victory in one fight only means that the next will be against an even more dangerous opponent, the price of success measured in escalating challenges rather than increasing safety. But for now, Marcus is content to savor the moment, to enjoy the crowd's adulation and the knowledge that he has proven himself against one of the best fighters in the Empire. That night, as he lies in the infirmary receiving treatment for his own wounds from the fight, Marcus allows himself to dream about the future. Perhaps there really is a path from the arena back to the peaceful world he remembers. Perhaps the olive trees are still there, waiting for his return.